The story usually starts with spies. It has to. The man was found on a beach in Australia in 1948. The Cold War was just getting started. He had no ID. The tags were cut from his clothes. In a hidden pocket, there was a scrap of paper. It said, Tamam Shud. It means it is finished in Persian. The paper was torn from a rare book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. In the back of that book, someone had written what looked like a code. It's a perfect spy story. A secret agent, double-crossed and poisoned by his enemies. He leaves behind one final cryptic clue. For decades, that's the story we've told ourselves. It's exciting, it's a movie plot played out in real life. We want it to be true. But what if it's not? What if the truth is simpler? What if it's more human, and because of that, much sadder? What if the Somerton Man wasn't a spy at all? What if he was just a man with a broken heart? A jilted lover who traveled to the end of the world for a woman who didn't want him. And when he realized it was truly over, he decided that everything else was too. This is that story. It's the non-spy theory. It's a theory built not on secret codes and geopolitics, but on poetry, rejection, and a woman's phone number written in the back of a book. Let's go back to the beginning. December 1st, 1948. Somerton Park Beach, just outside Adelaide, South Australia. A man is found lying in the sand, propped against the seawall. He's dressed well, or a suit and tie, polished shoes. He looks peaceful, like he's sleeping, but he's dead. The police arrive. They search his pockets. They find a train ticket to the beach, a bus ticket from the city, a comb, some chewing gum, and a pack of cigarettes. No wallet, no money, no identification of any kind. This is the first strange thing. Most people carry something that says who they are. This man had nothing. An autopsy is performed. The coroner finds congestion in his brain and stomach. He suspects poison, something fast-acting and hard to trace. But they can't find any. His last meal was a pasty eaten a few hours before death. He was in peak physical condition. His hands were soft, not those of a laborer. His calf muscles were high and well developed, like a dancer's or a distance runner's. The police checked the local lost and founds. They find a brown suitcase that was checked into the Adelaide railway station cloakroom the day before the man was found. Inside are clothes, a dressing gown, slippers, shirts, and underwear. But on every single piece of clothing, the name tags have been carefully cut out. Someone went to a lot of trouble to erase this man's identity. A spy, people thought. Or a man on the run. But there were other things in the suitcase, a stenciling kit like one used by officers on merchant ships to mark cargo. A thread card of orange wax thread, not available in Australia. It was the same type of thread used to repair a pocket in the man's trousers. This suggests he packed the suitcase himself. He wasn't just a random body dumped on a beach. He was a man who had traveled, a man who owned things, a man who, for some reason, wanted to be a ghost. For months, the case went nowhere. The man was a phantom. Nobody claimed him. His fingerprints matched no one on file. His face, plastered in newspapers across the country, was a mystery. He was buried without a name. Then they found the book. A man came forward. He said that right after the body was discovered, he'd found a rare copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam in the back of his car. He thought nothing of it. His car had been parked near Somerton Beach. He tossed the book in his glove compartment and forgot about it. Some months later, he read about the police search for a copy of this specific book and realized what he had. The police examined it. On the last page, the words Tamam Shud were torn out. The scrap of paper from the dead man's pocket was a perfect match. This was his book. And in the back of the book, written faintly in pencil, were 5 lines of capital letters, and they looked like a code. The second line was struck through. It was baffling. For spy theorists, this was the smoking gun. A secret message. Proof of espionage. But there was something else written in the back of that book. Something much simpler than a code. There was a phone number. The police traced the number. It belonged to a young woman who lived in Glenelg, a suburb right next to Somerton Park. Her name was Jessica Thomson, though she went by Jo. She was a nurse. She lived less than half a mile from where the man's body was found. When the police showed her a plaster cast of the dead man's head and shoulders, she had a strange reaction. One detective said she was completely taken aback, to the point of giving the appearance that she was about to faint. She looked down. She seemed distressed. But when they asked her if she knew him, she said no. She denied everything. She said she had no idea who he was or why he would have her phone number. She did admit one thing. She said that she used to own a copy of the Rubaiyat. She had given it to a man named Alfred Boxall, an army lieutenant she knew while working in a hospital in Sydney during the war. The police thought they had their man. Alfred Boxall must be the Somerton Man. But when they found Boxall, he was very much alive, and he still had his copy of the Rubaiyat, the one Jessica had given him. He even opened it for them. In the back, she had written a verse for him. It was a complete dead end. The Somerton Man was not Alfred Boxall, so the police were left with a puzzle. A woman who lived a short walk from the death scene. A woman whose phone number was in the dead man's book. A woman who acted like she'd seen a ghost when she saw his face. And a woman who lied, or at least seemed to be hiding something significant. This is where the spy theory starts to fall apart, and the jilted lover theory begins to make sense. Let's stop thinking about codes and start thinking about people. Let's think about Jo Thomson. It's 1948, she's a married woman, maybe she has a young son. An affair, especially one with a mysterious man who ends up dead on a nearby beach, would be a life-destroying scandal. It would ruin her marriage, her reputation, her entire world. Of course she would lie. She had everything to lose. Her reaction wasn't the shock of seeing a stranger. It was the terror of seeing a past she had tried to bury. Now think about the book. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam is not a spy manual, it's a book of poetry. It's about living life to the fullest, drinking wine, and love. It's also deeply fatalistic. It's about the finality of death. It's exactly the kind of book a passionate, perhaps slightly dramatic, couple would share. It's a lover's book. The phrase Tamam Shud means it is finished. A spy might use it to signal the end of a mission. But a heartbroken man might see it as something else entirely. The end of a relationship. The end of hope. The end of his life. Tearing it out and keeping it in a secret pocket is a deeply personal, symbolic act. It's a final statement. My love is over. My life is over. It is finished. And what about the code? The lines of jumbled letters. For 70 years, cryptographers have tried to crack it. No one has succeeded. Maybe that's because it isn't a code at all. What if it's just the desperate scribblings of a man in turmoil? The first letters of words from a favorite poem he was trying to remember. The initials of places they had been. A meaningless doodle written in a moment of despair. We see a code because we are looking for a spy. If we look for a heartbroken man, we might just see a broken mind pouring its confusion onto a page. It's possible the second line is crossed out because he made a mistake or because he changed his mind. It's a human act, not a professional one. The location is maybe the most telling clue. Why Somerton Park Beach? Of all the places in Australia, why there? The spy theory has no good answer, but the lover theory has a perfect one. He died there because she lived there. He didn't just wash ashore, he took a train and a bus to get as close to her as he could. Imagine his final days. He travels to Adelaide to see her. Maybe he hopes for a reconciliation. He checks his suitcase at the station. He goes to find her. He contacts her. And she rejects him. She tells him to leave her alone. She's married now. She has a different life. It's over. So he walks to the beach, a place they might have walked together once, a place where he can look out at the ocean and feel the finality of it all. He has the book of poetry she once gave him, or that they once shared. He sits down by the seawall. He takes out the scrap of paper that says, "It is finished." He takes the poison he brought with him. And he waits. This version of the story explains Jo Thomson's role perfectly. She's not a fellow spy caught in a web of intrigue. She's the reason for everything. She is the beginning and the end of his story. Her lie to the police wasn't an act of espionage. It was an act of self-preservation. Let's reconsider the other spy evidence through this lens. The cut tags on the clothing. A spy does this to hide his identity and country of origin. But a man planning to end his own life might do the same thing. He doesn't want to be identified. He doesn't want his family to know what he did. He doesn't want to bring shame and scandal to the woman he loved. It's an act of erasing himself from the world, a final, desperate gesture of control over his own narrative. He will be a mystery because he has nothing left to be, the untraceable poison. This sounds like something from a Cold War thriller, but in 1948, toxicology was not what it is today. Certain substances like digitalis from the Foxglove plant could induce heart failure and be very difficult to detect after death. It doesn't require a government agency to acquire something like that. It just requires knowledge and determination. Or perhaps the coroner was simply wrong. Perhaps the man died of a sudden undiagnosed medical condition. A broken heart can be more than a metaphor. Severe emotional distress can put a fatal strain on the human body. The Cold War context is perhaps the biggest red herring of all. The Woomera Prohibited Area, a top-secret rocket testing range, was in South Australia. This has always been a key part of the spy theory. He must have been there to steal secrets. But Woomera is hundreds of miles from Adelaide. It's a long way to go to die on a beach. People fell in love, had affairs, and suffered heartbreak during the Cold War, just as they did at any other time in history. The presence of a military base doesn't turn every unexplained death into an act of espionage. Sometimes a coincidence is just a coincidence. For decades, this was as far as the story could go. A compelling theory, but one without a name. The Somerton Man remained a ghost. But recently, technology has given him a voice. A professor at the University of Adelaide named Derek Abbott became fascinated with the case. He and his team managed to get some of the hairs that were trapped in the plaster cast of the man's head. From those hairs, they painstakingly built a DNA profile. They used that profile to build a massive family tree, searching for a match. In 2022, they announced a name. They believe the Somerton Man was Carl Charles Webb. Who was Charles Webb? He was not a spy. He was an electrical engineer and instrument maker born in Melbourne in 1905. This fits with the stenciling kit found in the suitcase. It fits with his soft, non-laborer's hands. And he was a man with a trade. His personal life is even more telling. He was married, but his wife had moved out and filed for divorce. He was living with his in-laws. He was reportedly a quiet man. He liked to bet on horses. And his sister-in-law said he had a habit of writing poetry. He sometimes even gave people a copy of the Rubaiyat as a gift. Suddenly, the pieces start to fit, not into a spy puzzle, but into a human one. Charles Webb was a man whose life was falling apart. His marriage was over. He was estranged from his wife. He was adrift. The research also uncovered a possible link to Jo Thomson. Her husband's name was Prosper Thomson. Public records show a Prosper Thomson who applied for a military loan. On that application, he listed his previous address. It was in the same Melbourne suburb where Charles Webb's brother-in-law lived. This is not definitive proof, but it suggests their worlds may have overlapped. It's plausible that Jo, before she was married, met and had a relationship with Charles Webb in Melbourne. Maybe they had a passionate affair. Maybe Webb, a man who loved poetry, gave her the Rubaiyat. Then the war, or life, or something else pulled them apart. She moved to Adelaide, met Prosper Thomson, and started a new life. Years later, Webb's own marriage collapses. He feels lost. He thinks about the woman he once loved. He decides to go to Adelaide to find her, hoping to rekindle what they had. He packs his suitcase, including the tools of his trade and the waxed thread he used for repairs. He leaves Melbourne without telling anyone where he is going. He finds Jo, but she is not the same woman he knew. She is Mrs. Thomson now. She has a family. She turns him away. For Charles Webb, this is the final rejection. His old life is gone. His hope for a new one is shattered. It is finished. He wanders to the beach near her home. He is a man with no future, and he has already started to erase his past by cutting the tags from his clothes. He sits by the sea, the book of poetry in his hand, and decides to end the story. This theory doesn't answer every single question. Why did he use a name like Keane on some of his clothes? Maybe it was an alias or a nickname. Why were some of the train timetables and other details so odd? People in distress don't always act rationally. Their movements can be erratic. The code remains a mystery, but one that seems less important when viewed as a personal note rather than a state secret. What the jilted lover theory does is provide a motive. It provides a powerful, universal, and tragic reason for a man to be where he was, doing what he did. Spies are abstract. A broken heart is real. We've all felt some version of it. The spy story is more exciting. It involves clandestine meetings, secret ink, and the fate of nations. But the story of Charles Webb, the heartbroken instrument maker, is more profound. It's a story about the quiet desperation that can hide behind a well-dressed exterior. It's a reminder that the biggest mysteries are often not about governments and secrets, but about the human heart and the desperate, sad things it can lead us to do. Jo Thomson took her secrets to the grave. She died in 2007. Her daughter has said she believes her mother did know the Somerton Man, and that their connection was a romantic one. She even hinted that he might be the father of her brother Robin. If true, it would make Jo's decades of silence even more understandable. She was protecting her son, not a state secret. For over 70 years, the Somerton Man has been a blank canvas onto which we've projected our love for a good mystery. He has been a Russian agent, an American operative, a smuggler, a defector. But maybe he was just Charles, a man who loved a woman, a man who wrote poetry, a man whose world ended not with a bang, but with a quiet decision on a lonely beach. The truth might not be a thriller. It might just be a tragedy, and that in its own way is a much more powerful story. Tamam Shud, it is finished.